Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do generally stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, usually on either Tuesday or Wednesday nights, as of right now, and it also gets uploaded as a YouTube video on the channel of Zenitsu while being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. So please feel free to do all of the social media doobly-doos and leave that like, rating, follow, subscribe, review, whatever, depending on the platform that you're listening on. It really does help support the podcast. Today, I am back with Team Blank, more specifically Headless. I don't know if anyone else is going to magically join. If they do, cool. If they don't, I at least have Headless. And today, we are going to be talking about EX7. Just because, EX7 is, around the corner, 2 weeks away, something like that, as of the recording of this. And we're not necessarily going to be doing, the usual, deck-by-deck breakdown, because the majority of EX7 doesn't seem very competitive, which is perfectly fine. Not every set needs to be power creeping, the previous one. So I do like the step back. So we're going to be more talking specifically about, individual aspects of the set that we're excited about. But first, we have the meta report and the question of the week. So we'll start with the question of the week because that'll lead into the meta report. So the question of the week is going to be, what do you think of the BT17 environment, especially after playing a couple of events or just playing in it with the bans and restrictions? So feel free, anyone who's listening, to type out your answers down in the comments below. But, yeah, so what do you think, Headless? BT17, you like it?
I was already kind of interested in 17. 17 was fairly fun to me because my Doruga deck finally got all its pieces and was fun in doing stuff. I still think it's a cool deck. It sucks that my armor back isn't a real deck anymore, but you can still kind of make tops with it. So, but otherwise, I think the big problem I have right now is that we traded Unumon for what now feels like it's just Imperial or other blue decks, and sadly, other blue decks mean that the decks that I like to play that have on deletes and cool stuff like that just don't do anything.
Yeah, blue, we kind of already alluded to blue being, absolutely ridiculous, but we didn't know to what extent it was going to be ridiculous, and now we kind of know, and yeah, a lot of blue decks right now are basically eating real good just because they kind of just counter everything that's left in the meta, because without Magna, there's no big wall, and half the blue decks already can get over the remaining big walls just, again, by ignoring them or getting around them. And then they just out on delete stuff, like you said. They have some of the best card draw and tempo in the entire game, next to purple. Purple, I honestly think, is still better in terms of, finding cards. It's just blue, you don't need to discard in order to do that. You just literally go through your deck. And yeah, blue just seems to be in a really strong spot. Blue was already pretty okay in Numemon, but Numemon just had that level of tempo efficiency that was able to out blue. So, and when blue gets outed, it gets outed. It's very hard for blue to recover because it is so it's not really one-dimensional. I mean, a lot of the top blue decks are definitely not one-dimensional. But it definitely is a little bit harder for them to build themselves back up most of the time. And now that
blue just doesn't inherently have effective memory cheat. It has pretty good memory cheat for specific cards, right? Mirage is crazy.
Yeah.
for that, but like everybody else isn't doing anything so crazy aside from like Imperial right now. But I think that it has to do with the fact that its secondary color is green, so they thought that it was fine that they'd have that.
Yeah, and that's kind of where like Imperial is like actually the best deck of the format in my perspective. We'll go over some of the tournament results that we have because we have two events. But yeah, so I'm kind of mixed on BT17 in its current state just because like I am a blue player, so I know I'm eating good, but I'm having a hard time picking what blue deck I feel like I want to play because they all kind of like out each other, and then they also just out almost everything else in the entire game, which is kind of funny. But I don't know, it just doesn't necessarily feel great because it feels like with blue being super dominant, it's extremely tempo based. And blue having some of the best tempo means that if you're ever behind, you drastically feel it in comparison to some other decks. And I think
Mm-hmm.
like losing that arms race, that's the part that I'm having issues with, even as a blue player. So let's go over the event data and kind of see, because like what, we don't have any more big competitive events for BT17. The next one is going to be EX7, and that's going to be at the end of September.
Mm-hmm.
So BT17 is basically done, which is funny
Yeah.
to think about competitively. So
Mm-hmm.
just going over some data. The first one is the Carta Magica Niagara Falls Regionals.
Yeah,
This
an in-person
was,
regional.
yes, this was in person. Nice to see that it was in person. I actually accidentally signed up for this regional, not realizing it was in person, and then I was just like, "Oh, hey, could I have a refund? I don't think I can make it to not California, to Niagara Falls."
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as how many players, there was 322 players, 9 rounds of Swiss, which is really good for an in-person event. They were also holding some like 2 other Dragon Ball events. I don't know if they had a One Piece event there or not, but they were doing Dragon Ball on top of that, and the Dragon Ball numbers didn't even hit 100 players in person per per game because there's 2 Dragon Ball games. So it's nice to see that Digimon's like in full force, like full force. But as far as the archetype breakdown, we had 9 Imperial. This is the blue-green DNA Imperial, not the red-purple crisscross DNA. Then we have 2 Ancient Gurus, 2 Magnamon X. These are blue-based Magnamon X, not yellow vaccine. We have 1 Dexter Goramon, 1 yellow vaccine armor, and 1 Omnimon. So yeah, this event was definitely heavy Imperial. From reports that I heard over the interwebs, about literally half the player base was playing Imperial, so it's no shocker that, self-fulfilling prophecy says that if everyone plays Imperial, Imperial is going to top probably the most. So
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what happened here. Because every good player that's on Imperial can probably do really well with Imperial. It was the same logic why people were playing Numemon, except, there were decks that countered Numemon, and there was the decks that, like, Numemon kind of fed on to be in the position that it was. Imperial's a little bit different because it's not feeding on any decks, it just is flat out the best deck. So, first place obviously went to Imperial. Second place was also Imperial. Third place was Ancient Garurumon. Fourth place was Imperial. Fifth place was the Dexter Goramon. Sixth was Yellow Vaccine. Seventh was Imperial. Eighth was also Imperial, as well as ninth. 10th is the Magnamon X. 11th was Imperial. 12th was the Ancient Garurumon. 13th was another Imperial. 14th was Magnamon X. 15th was Omnimon. And 16th was Imperial. So we're not really going to go over any of the Imperialists more specifically. They're all relatively the same because you're
There's one standout
yeah the
being
only
11th place.
yeah the 11th place is labeled as armor, so it
They're playing
is
Magna X and
yeah
running some other like armor form pieces.
yeah they're running Lydramon, which is really good because they're heavy on the Vmons, so it makes sense that you'd run Lydramon over Togumogumon. And then as the blocker armor, they're running the starter deck Magnamon, which has D-Digivolve, which actually is insanely relevant because D-Digivolve is one of the best, if not the best, soft removal right now in the game, just because it's not getting rid of the Digimon. There's almost no protection for it. So it just really can have a dramatic tempo shift, ruining the opponent's game plan. And then you also get to evolve just a stray Vmon, which you could have off of the Ken and Davis tamer. So that way you could just, get up into it, and then he's also doubling as removal as well as being an armor. Then they're obviously just doing the same thing, DNAing into Pyldramon. If Pyldramon partitions, it spits out the Magnamon, which is fine. And then Magnamon X is just such a good card. There's no real reason not to run it. So they're obviously running it, which is cool. And they're running the starter deck Dragon mode, so that way they could try to split a straight armor, so they could use that for another DNA to get into a ideally better stack for Magnamon X antibody. So it's a cool deck, and all of the others are kind of just the Imperials we've been seeing, except some people are running like what? The only real difference is some people are running 1 versus 2 Paladin modes, and the different numbers on their options between Progenitor and Gigadeath, and that's the majority of the differences.
Mm-hmm.
So cool to see that. Then Yellow Vaccine, as I kind of already mentioned before, it is actually armor vaccine. So they actually decided to cut the what's its face? God, Gold Vidramon. That's it. Which I think is okay. Gold Vidramon's kind of optional, and instead they're running Gatomon, just because Gatomon helps with tempo. So like if you Patamon into Gatomon, you're just gaining an absolute metric butt ton of memory. And then the barrier and security effect is not negligible either. It's a pretty good card. And then obviously to flesh out the deck to fill out what it lost, it's just running more aces, and then you have Edamon. So like you're just running good level 5 cards to be able to go up into your level 6s, which they're running the Mega Gargamon because you're already running the Rapids. Then they're running Valk for Edamon just because, good control. And then a split between Rapid X because you're already running Rapids, and then Magnamon X because, again, you're running Rapids. And Venusmon to kind of round things out. So the big change that a lot of players are doing in terms of adapting what they lost is
Playing level 5s.
yes, playing level 5s and then just running BT1 TK, because he still searches, so you at least have an idea on what's in your security. You could take whatever piece you feel like you need or are missing, and he's a memory setter, so he'll just set you to 3. So he's still a fairly good turn 1 play on top of Patamon. So it's just they're just figuring out what to be able to do to accommodate what they lost, and it shockingly enough still works. Wow, who would have thought? They just play level 5s, right?
They probably saw a lot of success due to like the new aces that they're running, since they're on much lower counts of the old Golden Armor X boys. So they're only on 2 Magna X and only on 2 Rapid X. So it's clear that that's not the main game plan. My guess is that if you can, you stick one of those down and you sit on it for as long as you can, while developing other stuff and looking for spots to trap people with aces.
Yeah, and I think it's honest because literally the level 4s, because they're also running the Mega Gargamon Ace, is a trap for any level 5 ace, on top of now you have a level 6 ace that they might not even be expecting. So I think the deck is going through this type of a change where maybe it's not hardcore let me get to Magnamon X, and it's let's play this weird hand trap deck, which is
Hmm.
fine. It's not a bad thing to have in the game.
For the most part, like you're talking about, like Gatomon's like a lot of memory on top of Patamon's,
Yeah.
right? Because it effectively is giving you the same like that the old TK was doing by giving you that one extra memory so you can like raise and be at 3. But my big issue with it, and I guess that's probably why like they cut the other armor guys, is that like not having an armor form level 4 like just means that you can't ever make a Magnamon on that stack, which is kind of bad.
Yeah, which is probably why they're running less Magnamon, like literally
Hmm.
less Magnamons, because of that fact. So that way, like you said, they're just more generic good stuff dot
Hmm.
deck, and it's just so happened to be in yellow. Because
Yeah.
the Edamon also could set up the Mega Gargamon as well. So if you're
Yeah.
just evolving up, you have so many trap points that it is kind of crazy.
Hmm. I do
Uh,
spawn funny cards that I don't think that I'd be interested in playing. Like I don't think Promo Patamon um, from the movies is that great of a card. I
I
don't
mean,
think
it's
that
just
it
another
accomplishes
searcher.
too much for you.
Yeah.
Like my big like I guess in this version of the deck, it grabs all of your like aces out of security, which is I guess nice. But like otherwise, I'm like pretty meh on him. And then I do feel like they don't really need the Nyaro that much. Like, I get that maybe you want it as your egg under Magna, but like, there's no guarantee that that's the way you're going to be able to build a stack. And if we're not
Niaro.
focusing on it, then I think that they should just be playing a EX 6 Cupimon. Like, you have angels that you wouldn't mind pulling out of security with it, and
Niaro is for Valkyrie, I think, just because like Valkyrie triggers whenever a security is removed. So that way you could swing, remove a security, either delete something or give him security attack plus before anything happens. Ideally, you're probably just going to use it to delete something. And
right.
then
But
Niaro
in
also can trigger the Angelwomon Ace to potentially recover you one. And it also
right,
triggers the Gatomon.
uh-huh.
So
But
there's things that it's
Cupid
triggering.
does the same thing because their text is remove, not trash, right? So they
Yeah.
just care that something leaves. They don't care how it leaves. So Cupid being like adding it to your hand is the same. It's removing it, and you're not losing a card to trash. You at least get to have that card in hand.
I mean, it's this, I guess, technically the start of the new BT17, so people are still figuring out ways to optimize the list.
Hmm.
So I
But
think,
that's just where I'm at.
yeah,
Where
I
like
think,
as I see it, I think otherwise, pretty good stuff.
yeah, it makes sense. So if you
Hmm.
want to go over Dexter Gora, because you're more of the expert than I am, because this one was actually on
Blackface.
black base, which I know you're a huge fan of, and a lot of people
Hmm.
do prefer purple base, and I think in one of the other events, purple base was successful. So we'll kind of go over both for a bit. So take
So
it away,
the
black expert.
So the main thing is that they decided that they just didn't actually want to play like all of the dex pieces, so they're all like on other like SOC parts because they wanted the Megidramon to I think have better ways to find tamers. And that Megidramon is pretty cool. Like having basically unconditional when attacking the Digivolve is pretty good. Like it makes your Doragora like pretty lethal. Like you never really have to be afraid of anything when you're doing a collision swing. So it is definitely a way to go. I do feel like losing out on the protection that is afforded to you by playing all of the dex parts is a little unfortunate. And there are some funny lines you can do with the Dextoru Grave. But otherwise, like I do like what they're doing here. So they have like the Sephirothmon to like force attacks. I do kind of just wish that he evoed for 2 on top of Tamers. I think it's criminal that he costs 3. Um, I'm a big fan of that Black Agumon, so like the fact that they're only playing as a one of is a little sad because you can stick more than one of them on the board, which is not the hardest thing to do with the level 5s inheritable. The Doragrave, which lets you play out a SOC or X antibody like 5 cost Digimon card. from your trash for free. Like, there's some very funny plays you can do, like using your Kosuke's. They're actually playing Marvin, and I think Marvin decent. Like, the important thing is that all the SOC tamers give you blocker. Like, if he didn't give you blocker and gave you some other keyword, I think there would be no reason to play him, even just for like trash setup.
Yeah, and I think
Uh,
like from what I can tell, the Dexter Goromon has the reboot, so that's how you get reboot to do blocker. So like having blocker and jamming plus reboot plus Digivolve isn't like awful. And
mhm,
at least like if you're kind of stuck, Megidramon also can act as another digging tool, which isn't
yeah.
bad.
hmm As well as he can absorb either like a tamer to like get you a tamer on board, or you can just eat another one of your inheritable. So like, if you made the stack with Megidramon, you can still get a Doru Grey in the stack just to have the inheritable.
Yeah, which is kind of similar to what Dex is doing because it still gets you something into the stack, eat something, and then spit out a what 5 cost or less.
hmm Yeah.
Which for black
Um,
base, that's how you actually get your tamers out of the trash because
mhm.
otherwise, if they're in there without that type of effect, there is no getting them back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
the
also
rookie
on
count is a
UG.
little,
Yeah,
which is interesting. I think the UG is interesting. Like I kind of get why it's there, right? So when because all of your guys that are kind of come out of the breeding area are going to be X antibody basically, aside from maybe Agu or if you have to put the Chikuri, but like more than likely you're going to get your one memory and a draw. So like I get that. Like that's not bad.
yeah, and it also is a way to throw Doru Gray underneath or just extra Dorumons.
hmm
So it's not terrible. I see its purpose. It just is a little bit weird because it and the AG are just standout one ofs. Like AG's not bad either, but the deck doesn't have a way to play AG unlike Marvin or Kosuke. And obviously Kosuke's the main one you
Um,
want.
So you can still do AG because he's SOC traded. So AG can get eaten by Megidramon when you do the search. You can choose to inherit him.
Oh right, I totally forgot about that.
So there's that way. Otherwise, like him being 3 cost isn't too bad to like. You don't really feel bad throwing him down and he rebates you a memory every turn. And then Alliance just can end up sometimes being really big, like with some of your guys. I think the one thing that would make it even better, like I think purple base like would honestly be completely the go-to is if they had been given like piercing anywhere else in the line somewhere.
Yeah, but I think like for what the deck is doing, it's a pretty decent control deck. At least I see it more as a control deck. That
hmm
just because collision just basically is let me just kill your stuff. I'm gonna attack into it, and then if I die, then I'm just gonna evo out of my trash because protection that way, and then just out your guy because that's what they're supposed to do.
hmm
So I like a lot of what the deck is doing. I think it's pretty neat. Dexter Agora is definitely a insane card, just because Dorugamon is already a good card, and this just makes it better because now you have some really strong protection. Like I can't undervalue how good the protection just having the Dex cards in the trash is.
hmm
And then they're also running Mega Gargamon Ace because why not?
Yeah, it's just a cheeky little one of. The main thing, right, is the main strength of the black base is actually getting to play your SR rookie, the Dorumon. Because to be honest, right now the biggest problem that the deck faces is getting outed by like non-deletion effects. So just having that little bit of protection, like one turn here or there, like does really help. So like another member of Team Blank trying out purple base and was slamming his head into Mastimon and just constantly getting like outed by the ace because he has no protection and no way to get rid of the level 6 when he's trying to cheat into his Doragora with his Doragreymon. Because sadly, collision forcing blocker means that you don't get to do the Evo until after counter timing.
Oh, right. Yeah, but I think this is a pretty cool list. And then just gonna highlight both the ancients real quick, just because
Mhm.
ancient is, and then there's Omnimon. But ancients is gonna go real quick because most of the package is literally just Lobomon, Kendomon, ancient, and then your Koji tamers, and that's for the most part it. So people are still kind of debating if blue base is better or if red base is better. And basically, the big difference is blue base is more control orientated and red base is more aggro orientated, because what you're losing with uh, blue is red's draw and the lack of care for your rookies. So you're just swinging mindlessly with your rookies, getting card draws that way. Where blue is using them to potentially evo into Lobomon, the promo, to get a warp into Ancient that way. And there's a high chance that you might not be able to attack unless you have enough memory, which is why the Hammer Spark was kind of just needed, because there's no way you're attacking anywhere before that, and because Lobomon's when Digivolve, it also makes you more vulnerable to Digimon Emperor. So like there's a tons of pros and cons to both. But the fact that like it just goes to show how strong Ancient Gurumon is, where it doesn't really matter if you're blue or red, both have their own levels of success, is really cool. Both of the decks for this event, more specifically, were on blue base, just
Yeah.
because without the what 8 Ukamon, they go down to 5 Ukamon, so they're just like, well, I might as well just run the blue base and actually like have the ability to evolve traditionally. The inheritables off of the Strabbies are okay. They're not great, but they're fine. It's just
The new one's pretty
something.
good.
Yeah, it's just they're good searchers. That's really the big thing. Both of the
Mhm.
good Strabbies are searchers. Although the BT7 Strabby, funny enough, can't actually grab the ancient, but outside of that, it grabs like
Yeah.
almost everything else. So that
I,
is ancient, at least the blue side of things. And then the
I
last
I
deck.
do think
Oh, go ahead.
Blue Ancient makes a lot of sense. Like the main strengths of Red were like getting to play Crimson Blaze, and that was mainly for like one deck in the format.
Yeah, that was
But
mostly because
that
of
deck was
Ukamon.
a yeah, and that deck was around quite a bit, so like it made sense. Like I do think that giving up the amount of card draw and like some of the like cool floodgates that Red has, because I think Red almost has every floodgate at this moment.
They're missing one, which they're gonna, or they're missing like one or two that are actually important. And they're gonna be getting those later.
hmm So, like, I think that it's perfectly fine. Like, blue base is good. Just let's use that promo Lobomon to make ancient Garus that get to stay on the board, which is, nice.
Yeah, and then the last deck for this event that we're going to be talking about is going to be Omnimon, because a lot of people were kind of just writing Omnimon off, me included, just because Omnimon doesn't have protection. But Omnimon just has such efficient plays that it just kind of doesn't matter because he's trying to dump damage. It's actually kind of crazy. So the more classic approach to the deck, because there is just a lot of ways to actually build this deck, this is probably the more classic way, where you're using the BT17 stuff and then you're supplementing it with BT12 Agumon and EX4 Gabumon. The EX4 Gabumon just helps because the inheritable isn't bad if you are getting that off. I don't think you're really getting that off very often. It's just the search that matters and the Gabumon name. So that way you could just Digivolve into the Metal Guru. So that's pretty good there. The obvious BT17 stuff is synergizing very nicely with the new Tamer, but also synergizes pretty well with the old Tamer, because what a lot of people are doing is they're just warping up into one, then literally hard slamming the other as long as they have the Tamer that lets them like end of turn DNA. And then the Digimon's gonna have like blitz anyway, so it's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna swing, deal a damage for free because I can. And if they're able to maintain turn or keep the Omnimon around, that's when they alter B to just dump even more damage.
The new Tamer gives you pseudo blitz. You get to attack at the end of turn.
Yeah, so it's like the old Tamer gives you end of turn DNA, and whenever you're playing your cards, it starts giving you memory back, which is like the important part because you're going to be hard playing one passing over a decent amount and then slowly working your way back up. And then the new one, that's where you get basically pseudo blitz. So that's how you're getting your attack. And then they're playing the Tai and Kari to try to set up the ties, either of the ties. And they're playing a starter deck tie, just probably for more card draw. And the Tai and Kari interacts with the Greymon, and the Greymon can go on top of almost everything except for the Black Gabumon, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think the black tie is there as a memory setter mainly.
Yeah,
Like it ends up
he's
being
there
your
for the
best.
memory setter.
Yeah, it ends up being your best memory setter, and then you being a raid blocker means that like, you're guaranteed to be 17k most of the time.
Yeah, and then the option card is what helps set up your Digimon, so that way if you just are sitting on a Mega and they try to do anything, then Omnimon can literally just come out at any moment. Literally any moment. And because they're also playing the secret rares, they have extra warp points in case the opponent has a Mega. So that way they could try to out it that way and have fast Evos up into level 6s. Because the deck is not playing any level 5s. Spoiler. It just doesn't need to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Omnimon's pretty neat. It'll be interesting to see how this deck develops, if it's going to stay competitive or if this is just kind of like a one-off incidence. I think the deck does have some competitive viability, though. So that is Carta Magica in a nutshell. And then we got the other event that we're going to be talking about. Not this. That's an old tab. Here we go.
The French regional. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is a French regional. This is another in-person regional. And this one's a little bit more diverse. So it literally could be just, North America trying to be more competitive and thinking that Imperial is the best deck. And here's France telling us, no, there's still other stuff that could be played. So going over the archetype breakdown real quick, we have 3 Ancient Gurus, 2 7 Great Demon Lords, 2 Dexter Goromons, 2 Magnamon X's, 2 Imperials, 1 Fenrir Lucamon, 1 Mirage, 1 Royal Knights, 1 Mastimon, and 1 Tyrant. So that's a lot of different decks. This one had only 109 players, and it was 7 rounds of Swiss. First place went to Demon Lords as well as second. Third was Dexter Goromon, which we don't have the deck list for. Fourth was Dexter Goromon as well. Fifth was Magnamon X. Yeah, this is where the purple base one is. Sixth place was Ancient Guru. Seventh place was Fenrir Lucamon. This is the Takamikazuchi variant. Then we have at 8th place Magnamon X, 9th Mirage, 10th Ancient Guru, 11th Royal Knights, 12th Masty, 13th Ancient Guru, 14th Imperial, 15th Tyrant, and 16th Imperial. So kind of just glossing over some of the decks that we haven't seen. Tyrant literally stays the same. You're just adding in the promo because evade and protection from almost everything while it's suspended is just good. And the trashing the opponent's security is relevant because Tyrant struggles with damage. So they're also splashing in Paladin because why not? It just outs purple, so that way you just don't lose to purple.
Mm-hmm.
Then Mastimon. I think Mastimon literally stays the same. Yeah, Mastimon pretty much stays the same. The only inclusion that they're doing is Shine Greymon Burst Mode Ace as an extra way to play a Mirai Tamer. None of them have on-play effects, but just being able to play more Tamers is good, and actually use them is good. And then the only other shift is they are including Dominimon, because they could easily get out a second level 5, so that way it either ace baits them, or you just Dominimon. And Dominimon gives your Masties protection, so I think that makes a lot of sense. Outside of that, it's nothing we haven't really seen before. Royal Knights, again, just nothing we really haven't seen before. It seems like the only new inclusion is the new Omnimon Ace, and that's because, isn't it Yggdrasil doesn't trigger Overflow because it didn't leave the battle area, or does it do that? I don't remember.
So they changed it so it's area, and area includes the battle area and raising.
Okay.
So when it goes into raising, it doesn't count as leaving
Leaving the
the
battle area.
area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that way you don't like lose to the overflow because Omnimon still has an on play effect.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and
then
it's not a bad one too. It's just like it just does a Gaia Force. It just kills a guy.
yeah, and then they're splashing in Crimson mode Ace and Paladin mode Ace for the turns that you use the BT13 Omnimon to pop your Drazel, then you could evolve. So that way it just gives you basically ace points to try to have some defense in case your offense wasn't enough.
So they're really good because actually, if you read Jeraisal, makes it so that it's during your own turn that you can't Evo.
Oh, so you could just still ace on their turn,
Yeah. Hmm.
and then they don't go away
And then
because
they
they're
don't
not Royal
become
Knights.
they're not Royal Knights anymore. Yeah, exactly. So they get to stay.
Oh, I didn't realize
Yeah.
that. I have been enlightened. Yeah, and then
Hmm.
you could still. Oh no, that's counter DNA, so you can't Omnimon Ace, but you could still Crimson and Paladin, which that's pretty good. Not gonna lie.
Hmm.
Um, and then they're running the Hakoto uh, tamer.
It's a decent team, right?
He's fine. I don't
Hmm.
hate him. I'm just not like overly in love with him. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, for the most part, Royal Knights really hasn't changed outside of just a couple of like fun little tweaks. Then Mirage, I don't think Mirage really changed. Like Mirage is just Mirage still. Yeah, Mirage is just Mirage. He's still just bouncing. I think like right now the importance on BT13 as like a support is kind of relevant because you need to get rid of tamers. But outside of that, it's just literally doing Mirage things. There's a couple of different ways that you could approach the deck, and none of them are really wrong. Fenrir Lugamon, just kind of
This.
like blazing through some of these because it's not like we haven't seen a lot of these
Yeah.
before. It's just what's actually changed. So with the Takami Kazuchi, they are also running the Dex Dorugoromon to protect the or Dex Darugamon. Gosh. To protect the Darugamon you were already playing because draw and discard on Evo is just good. And then this deck is also running Skull Bellucci to basically try to turbo evolve faster, which is not bad because when you discard them, you
Mhm.
get it evolve again. And with Takami Kazuchi, because he snaps you back at 3, you just don't care how much memory you're giving the opponent because he'll just literally set you to 3 and then gain you an extra memory. So that way you maintain turn and then can potentially OTK. So this
Mhm.
build is more specifically on 3 Kazuchi. I know like there's an argument between like 3 or 4 Kazuchi, and this person is also on Mist Memory Boost instead of like some of the other training cards just to try to have as many ways to try to get Kazuchi into the trash as possible cuz getting like seeing Kazuchi and Takami Kazuchi in trash can be annoying. Like I will have to say that from personal experience. It can be annoying. Outside of that, it's still just Fen. Like he's just doing good boy stuff.
I guess I didn't realize how many of the Garnet people wanted to play. You're telling me it's normally 4-3? I was like, I like barely want to play two of it.
Yeah, and then the Dexter Goramon deck at fourth place, because we don't have third place, is a purple base, and it's very close to what Fen is doing, except the Baumon is different because you're going to slide AG and then you could Digivolve, so you could use that in a couple of different ways, which is really good. Then you still have like your same low end package for the most part, and then the level 5s is just the Dex stuff for the most part. Very similar deck to both what Black Base was running and Fen. It's kind of just that middle ground between the two.
Mhm.
And then Seven Great Demon Lords, I literally don't think is changed at all. It's just Seven Great Demon Lords. I don't think they got any new cards. No, they didn't. So Seven Great Demon Lords is still just the same old deck. It can be very, very annoying. And if the opponent doesn't have a way to stop them, then they kind of just can steamroll and control the opponent out of the game. So, all in all, good showing, good decks. good diversity on this event compared to the other event, and they're kind of like metrics wise balancing each other out. So like usually we do see that type of data where we'll have like an event or two where the our perceived best deck will be about 50% or a little bit more, and then it'll rarely ever have that type of like repeat performance again. So who's to say if BT17 2.0, or I guess in this case point 0.5, if this format was actually continuing, then we might see a little bit more diversity as people figure out how to beat Imperial, and then that's where matchups actually start forming and the meta really starts developing past the initial, like, oh my god, what do I do? What is good? Kind of phase.
Mm-hmm.
So, all in all, good stuff. That is BT17 in a nutshell, competitively. I still think that there's a lot of good viable decks. It seems like really outside of just the meta change, the only like real new competitive decks was both of the SOCs. They were the only ones that kind of just broke in outside of Omnimon and Ancient Guru, but Ancient Guru was already known to be that good. So it's interesting to see like what actually translates from what we know is good to what actually put up results and put money where their mouth was.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a couple of other smaller events where, like, yes, it is known in smaller events that anything is kind of possible, depending on how small the event gets. So we do see, like, in some of the smaller events, like Diaboromon representation, Blue Flare representation, Red Hybrid representation. There's even a little bit of Numemon and Purple Imperial representation. We get, like, just some wild stuff. Shine is still good. So I think like it's not necessarily the worst meta. It's just a very blue dominant meta, and some people just might not like that.
Mm-hmm.
So now we could actually get into the real topic, which is not BT17, EX7. So EX7 is the introduction to Liberator set. It is also the start of Block 4. So that's important to note because Block 4 was, in my perspective, when the new designer supposedly started actually designing cards. Because we got the announcement of the designer change all the way back at Nationals, and usually card games like to work 2 to 3 to 4 sets in advance. So probably when she signed on, everything from Block 3 was already made, and as we could kind of see, like, Block 3 was incredibly pushed. Like, it probably pushed the boundaries more than any other block. So it's nice to see that from all of the Japanese spoilers and EX7 that Block 4 is trying to tone the power down and reel the game in. So we're not really going to be, as a result, talking like deck-specific things because a lot of these decks just aren't even meta-competitive compared to what we already have. So it's not really worth our time to like go super deep dive into them. But they do give us still a lot of like cool cards to be able to play with to, you know, have actual something worthwhile to look forward to out of the set. So, Headless, what are you actually excited for in the set, single card wise, instead of like, I mean, you could talk about like big overarching deck, like what you're going to use that single card for.
So, like, the main stuff that I'm excited for would be like Hexablau. I think that new Hexablau is a really good card. Like, he unfortunately doesn't have protection, but like making it so that your opponent can't suspend anything is pretty good.
He is definitely a strong generic blue card. This is where Iceclad like becomes a mechanic, and I kind of like what Iceclad is doing a lot. Like, it kills Mother.
I wish it was on more bodies.
Yeah, it kills Mother because Iceclad, basically the battle is checked by security instead of DP. So obviously blue having the sub-theme of source ripping means that you're generally going to have higher sources than the opponent. So
It's honestly really cool because it's a rules change, right, for how battles are conducted. So
Yeah,
you technically you beat stuff like Tyrant because you're more than likely gonna have more sources than them because they tend to not have as many sources anyways when they build stuff, and you beat Magna as well. So if they try and block you with their big invincible Magnum on X, as long as you have one more source than them, you just win the battle, and they're forced to armor purge down.
that's hilarious. Yeah, because I know the big thing that people were praising Hexablau for was Mother, because Mother's in that same camp where it's just like, oh, sure, go ahead, Mother Shoto. My Hexaplaumont just doesn't care.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think that guy's really cool. Like I was saying, I wish more of the family line had Ice Clad, and then maybe they'd be a little bit better. But like as far as what they're doing, like as their own little Ice Snow deck, I think they're fine. We look into the future, and we're able to see that we're gonna get more Ice Snow pieces, and some of those parts are pretty cool for later.
Yeah. The big
But
single.
otherwise, he's
Oh,
one
go
of my
ahead.
main guys.
Yeah.
Hexablower, he's like one of my main guys. Otherwise, trying to think who else I think is really cool, like on an individual level. Um, like I would say the Beelstar Ace, but like I mainly just like the fact that they were like, oh, we're just gonna pick the most popular out of the characters, and that one will be like the full top end for the deck, which I think is very funny, and I hope they start doing that more in the future.
Yeah. Beelstar Ace is pretty decent. On play when Digivolve, return an option card from your hand, then you could use an option card with three Musketeers and its traits for free, which it wants to do more specifically with its own stuff because the old Beelstar was 7 costed and all of these new cards are 6 costed. So they're trying to reboot what Three Musketeers was doing to actually be something more cohesive rather than Beelstar and her merry band of draw and discard to get a whole bunch of 7 cost options in your trash.
Hmm.
So I like what she's trying to do, even if she's not like insanely like great.
Hmm.
The card that I'm singularly most excited for is not really like an insanely powerful card. It's Saber Leomon Ace. I just like having one, another Ace Digimon, two, it's a Leomon, and three, it's an Ace Digimon for my Leomon deck. So it
Hmm.
basically replaces the Bancho out of the deck, so
Hmm.
that way we actually have some better counterplay. Because right now the deck is like severely lacking counterplay, and this card is just really good. Because the idea behind Fortitude is great. Like, oh, I get to trigger all my on delete effects, and that's going to mess the opponent up. But the opponent can just easily play around them. And Saber Leomon is obviously being an Ace Digimon a little bit harder to play around because now they have to play around Fortitude and the potential of an Ace Digimon. Then the card just does a
Hmm.
lot. Like on play when Digivolving, just suspend something in minus 8k is not bad. That's on 2 of the opponent's suspended Digimon. And then when Digivolving on attack, you get to suspend one of the Digimon, so that way you actually can 8k like minus 8k on something.
Minus at least one something. Yeah, one
Yeah.
thing.
And then if the opponent has no unsuspended Digimon, you get to unsuspend this Digimon, so that way you have multi-attacking shenanigans to try to push some pressure. It's only once per turn, but that's fine because it's just a good card. Like, it's not an insane
Yeah.
ace, but it is a ace. It's supposed to play with Nature Spirits because that's like a big thing for this set, but Nature Spirits is kind of mediocre. No protection is already like if your deck doesn't have protection, you better have a way to make up for that protection, and Nature Spirits just doesn't. And the fact that like they have really odd like ratios for how they need to run their cards because it's like, oh yeah, let's give them 3 different level 5s, 3 different level 4s, which is fine, and then only 2 level 3s. So like just from a design standpoint, they already kneecapped the deck because the deck doesn't have all of the pieces that it needs to actually be competitive. And then I know one of the other cards that I'm like super excited for is Metallic Dramon, because
Oh, yeah, that one's pretty cool.
yeah, I think like what Hina Dragons was doing was really cool, and seeing it get support and a new evolution line to make it better is always fun. But it's just such a strong card in of itself that it doesn't necessarily need the full Hina Dragons thing. It's good when you have it because of the protection that it offers, which again, protection is just being like such a huge thing right now in the game that it's really felt on decks that have protection versus decks that don't. And even if the deck that doesn't have protection, like I said, if it has good enough of a game plan to basically either A, ignore your protection, or B, win in spite of the lack of protection and be fast enough to be able to rebuild, then that's like a big key. And unfortunately, a lot of these decks just don't really have protections. Like, you do have protection off of the Shoto's deck, but that's off of the starter deck Mega. And that's the
Hmm.
only place that the protection is at. And it's good protection, don't get me wrong. That's what's like making the deck at least rogue at best. But the fact that like if it didn't have protection, the deck would be absolutely garbage and almost unplayable out of the box is kind of sad. Because at least Cinderellmon has like you could put in decoy for puppets, and it also has barrier, so it still has some levels of protection.
Give protection. They just have like pseudo decoy, like a non-keyworded scapegoat.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some of these other decks just don't have that, which is why they're not highly rated and why a lot of the set really isn't going to be impacting the meta much. You could technically run a couple of like fun niche cards for some niche decks, like Gigadramon giving collision for Machine Dramon is kind of cute. I'm not gonna lie.
Hmm.
Even though the rest of the card is for Three Musketeers, just the fact that it still fits inside of Machine Dramon because collision is just a blanket inheritable it could have. Like, you just discard it and then give it collision. You don't care about the rest of the text.
Yeah, the fact that it's cyborg really helps because before you could try and slot in the Locomon level 5 to get collision, but like it being a machine made it a little harder. So like you had less points where you get to absorb it.
Yes. And then obviously the big standout card that is on everyone's mind for the set is going to be on Shoto. Like, I honestly think Shoto is going to be this set's Ukomon. It's probably going to be like a $10 rare, which I think is like absolutely disgusting. But depending on how much EX7 is floating around, maybe it won't be 10, maybe it'll be 5. But even then, that's still ridiculously high for just a rare. For Digimon, at least.
Hmm.
So, what decks are you planning on using Shoto for?
Mm, unfortunately, I don't really have anything right now that I feel like it's needed for. Like, I think it could maybe find a home if I decide, like, since I have to make up for the fact that I no longer can play 8 Ukamons in, like, old Belphamon. I think if all of your Gizamons are blockers, that's honestly not bad. So, like, before it was only the big one that was a blocker. So them all being blockers, like, it does stuff for you.
Okay, I can see that.
Um, to be honest, there's not too much like green like that you can do with having green presence now, but like maybe there's like a funny card or two that I could figure out.
Are
I
you
just have to
kidding
see.
me? Green presence is like huge right now because of Heaven's Judgment. I know a lot of people don't like Heaven's
Oh, I
Judgment.
guess that's true, but
Yeah, it just
like
gives you
I
easy
would.
access at Heaven's.
It's only 12K though, because I don't have any extra colors unless like I have the old Ukamon out. The Ukamon that's not banned, right?
Yeah, at least for that deck. For other decks, they might be able to
Hmm.
abuse that a little bit more.
Yeah, use that better. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, like, because the deck set for sure goes into right. Like, you can build a new like funny blocker deck. And then there's Demon Lords like really appreciates it, but those aren't decks that I have like sitting around right now ready to go, so they're kind of whatever. So I'm just trying to think like I'll probably just for fun, like because I'm a bird fan, I'll build like Shoto's Vortex Guardian deck, and get to play around with some of those green birds. And there was a couple other like green bird ideas that I was floating around, so we'll see.
Yeah, because even just like thinking about it, you could technically run Shoto in the Royal Knights deck as well because it's doing something similar to what Demon Lords is doing. We've already kind of just covered it, and instead of like the Hakoto, you just run Shoto instead, and then boom, there's your upgrade to the deck, and now everything that you're going to be playing has blocker,
Yeah.
which is absolutely nuts when you're just hard slamming megas for cheap.
Yeah, the biggest problem though is that the Royal Knights weren't like built as crazy as the Demon Lords are, where like they tend to have like inferior stats overall than like other megas.
Yeah, but still hard slamming like a mega, giving it blocker on top of it supposedly killing something or searching or doing some other techie stuff.
hmm
Like it's not bad. Plus, like the generic memory gain is better than what Hakoto was doing anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes you did appreciate the draw over the memory, but in most cases you actually just wanted memory from him. So you just getting it, like I think is fine.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like what other fun decks that Shoto would go in. Like you could splash Shoto into Ancient.
Uh, yeah. Like it just gives you extra a little bit of defense here or there, but like there's nothing that like is really like breaking it right this second that I can think of. So
Yeah, I think funny enough, Shoto's better in Ancient Greymon than Ancient Garurumon because that one actually wants to use the old one, which then spits out the body, which you could then make into a blocker with Shoto.
hmm yeah, and even if you're playing the new one, right? Doesn't the new guy randomly already cares about like more colors in your tamers?
He cares about purple though.
Oh, okay.
Oh wait,
I forget what colors he cares about.
no, the ancient Guru cares about purple because that's why people
Okay.
run Mat and that's why people run Lament. Even though I
Okay.
found in testing that combo in Synergy is so much harder to get off than it actually reasonably is. Let me check what the ancient Gray
Right.
wants.
Cares about, yeah. Because they're sort of set up for like the upcoming set where like all of the colors got shuffled again.
That's the promo.
You should be checking
It's
Ancient
blue or
Gray.
green. Yeah, so it's blue
Okay,
or
yeah, yeah.
green. So he definitely could be a potential card to add into Ancient Greymon specific builds.
Mhm.
So that is a possibility.
Mhm.
Then obviously his own deck, which I think like the Liberator starter decks, I was writing a review on them and I was thinking like objectively hard about them just because I have to. I think
Mhm.
as decks, they would be better if they had an ace Digimon. Like, if honestly the extra mega was just some mediocre ace Digimon, I think like that would make the starter decks more appealing as a product because like obviously right now these starter decks are more to sell boxes of EX7 because it's like, "Oh, I'm going to buy my Shumon deck and then I'm going to now get easy upgrades from the Liberator stuff because that's where all of the stuff is." And then you cry the second you have to like buy
Our
promos.
promos, yeah. I honestly think that they needed to do the promos better. Like, so Shoto got a couple reprints, and they like released Zephica ST18 like early, right? If you played Evo Cups,
Yeah.
but like, and then they gave you like higher rarity versions of Gale and Patera, but like Shu doesn't really have that, and like the only ways that we were able to get this card is you had to be at Nats and get the Liberator promo packs, which they weren't giving out that many, and Nats was like really busy. So like
Yeah,
kind of
they
rough
ran
at
out too.
like Bandai Card Fest, and then yeah, exactly, and then the fact that like the only other spot to get them was you bought the crappy movie, and you got like one pack in there. And I don't know that
Yeah.
anybody wanted to buy like I have no clue what a DVD goes like $20 to $30
Yeah,
like
it would probably
to
be like 20.
yeah. So like realistically, they just needed to do better for like getting those promos specifically in people's hands. Like
What they
I
should
think
have
it was
done was,
perfectly fine.
yeah, they should have done the adventure box thing, like they did with the
Uh-huh.
movie promos.
Movie promos, yeah. That would have been acceptable. I would have been fine with that. Like the other thing that I think would have been preferable is that they honestly should have, instead of like the Evo Cup prizing like being kind of what it was, like you could still have done an event like that, but I think that at the time the normal like store tournaments, like tournament volume whatever it's at, like should have been like how when we got like Ghost Game early, right? Like through those promos.
Yeah, I mean
I think it should have
Bandai's
been like that. I think it would have been better.
yeah, Bandai's known for being absolutely dog water with their promos. I'm looking at how many promos I have. I have one Shoto promo, one Gale promo, which now is like garbage because there's better
It
versions of
got
those
the
promos.
yeah, exactly.
Which is nice making those cards more accessible, but like you're already not playing the Shoto and you're barely playing this Gale because the other two Gales are actually just better. So, F me then, I guess.
Yeah,
And then I have
that
actually a
Gale's
ton of Shumon stuff.
decent.
Yeah, they're
Okay,
still
that's good.
decent. I have two Shumons, three Orisas, and two Shushumons, which the Shushumon is
Okay.
the worst one out of the three
Yeah.
Shumon stuff.
hmm Yeah, but the Chumon promo is a pretty good rookie.
Yeah. I mean, she plays. So I was doing like my research, and she plays really nicely with like Shine as a level 7 ace to burst into. So that way you could be like, okay, play out the Orisa. Orisa's gonna play out the Shumon, and that's kind of funny there.
hmm
And then you could just use her as just a generic tamer to just suspend to then be able to just give Shine some extra damage on your turn. And anything left on the field would have had security tech minus from the promo. So there's like some cute things that are going on with the promo.
Yeah, I think like luckily the Pateramons like the promo is okay, right? It's on play, suspend, and then the 2K is pretty good, but like otherwise it's on play is mediocre compared to the other ones, right? The one in the starter deck is a excellent searcher, right? And what does the EX7 one do again? Let me look.
I think EX7 is another searcher. Oh no, the starter deck is a searcher.
Yeah, that's Digimon. What did you? Oh, it's a promo Vmon, but for your birds and avians. Pretty good.
Yeah, so just reducing evolution cost is nice.
And then it has a memory gain when you delete something in battle inheritable, which is what the deck wants. So yeah, but I think luckily like that Proteramon is ends up being kind of your worst one. Like sure, it maybe sets up like a suspend so that you have something to like vortex into, and like 2K is not bad because your Zephygas like tend to be on like the weaker side stat wise. I
Yeah,
think starter deck is 11K, and I think the new one's a 12 at least, at the
yeah.
very
The
least.
the
But let
new
me go
one's the
look.
12 with security attack +1, and then doesn't
hmm
have any protections. And the old one is 11k, but he does, if you use him to his full capacity, give himself plus 3,000 DP and has
Yeah.
protection. So like a lot of the decks that I was looking at, they're only running like two of the new EX7 Zephyca, and then they're running like three or four of the starter deck one, just because, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, the protection is actually that important.
hmm
And the starter deck Zephyca is like really good, but I just wish like they could have made like literally they could have made the starter deck like off megas Ace Digimon. Like imagine Eaglemon Ace doing almost the exact same thing, just with Ace slapped on. That would be pretty
hmm
cool. Ace with a Fortitude seems like it would be really annoying. But I think
hmm
like that would like at least for a starter deck, trying to teach all of the players new mechanics, having that like having ace cards in the starter decks at this point just seems like it's kind of important. Because that,
Yeah.
that is a fundamental thing that players have to now be cognitively aware of. And, like, it's not like they don't have the design space for it, because, like, it's funny because both of the off megas also have on play effects. So it's just like a
Hmm.
Shinmonze Ace, I think, would have been absolutely hilarious. It has Armor Purge, so Overflow still triggers, but it at least keeps whatever's underneath it, and it's still, like, doing all the good stuff.
So that I can ace them again with another one. You're right.
Oh my god, yes! Just imagine, like, attack, ace, okay, get rid of it, Armor Purge, ace again. Like, oh, that would have been so good.
Would have been so funny, but yeah.
So that's like my only real complaint about the starter decks, other than the fact that they're just there to sell BT or EX7.
Yeah. I mean, they do give like the reprints for the trainings, which is nice, with the cool arts of the new protagonist characters.
They
Like
should
that's
have
all
gave
fun, but
they should have
but they
gave
should have given you the
reprints.
promos
Yeah,
for the Liberator stuff.
or at least like as an additional box topper for EX7, give the promos.
Yeah, I think they're just doing everybody a disservice with those. Like,
They are, and it's basically the Terriermon incident where it's just like, here's a Terriermon advanced deck. By the way, the set that's supposed to enhance it, the card you need like 3 to 4 of is an SR. Have fun spending money.
oh yeah, the you have to get a secret rare to like properly upgrade this card. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
messed up.
I kind of think that that side of Bandai is like getting a little on the scummy side.
Yeah, because it's like completely not what they did with Beelzemon. Like Beelzemon wanted you to get like 2 copies of an SR
Yeah, like 2 to 4 copies
and
of an
like and then
SR of an
lower.
older set.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you actually had
Oh,
the
that
chance
too.
to win
But
him.
yeah, exactly. So you had the chance to win that older SR, and then in the following set right after that, right? Because BT12 comes out right after the advanced deck.
Yeah, they came out like almost
You
at the same time.
Yeah, you upgrade and get a new SR being your X antibody, Beelzemon.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, unsure.
And the
I mean,
starter deck
hopefully they
even
do
came
better.
Yeah, and the starter deck even came with a reprint of the X antibody option. So it's just like, I think the timing on that advanced deck was way less scummy than what they have been doing for some of these other starter decks, because I feel kind of bad recommending the Wolf of Friendship and Dragon of Courage, because they're kind of just garbage starter decks. Like, they had a pre-release to try to hype them up, and I think like as a starter deck,
I
they
think
have
they're
aces, and that's the
only
only thing going for them.
yeah, and those aces are now considered fairly bad. Like
Exactly.
especially the black one.
It right. So it's just like
The black one being a do nothing blocker is really feels bad.
it is. I mean, you could use it kind of with Omnimon, kind of like both of them. It's not great, but it's something. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's something. Like, look, I'm just trying to apply value to a garbage product, and that's why, like, I thought that if they would have added aces to the puppets and vortex warriors, like, those would be the starter decks I would recommend to literally everyone, in spite of the fact that promos suck and you need EX7 to upgrade, but that's not. EX7 upgrading isn't that bad.
Hmm.
It's more of the
Yeah.
promos. Like, if they honestly had the promos in either the starter deck or the booster box, and then they had aces as their off megas, I think those would be home run products. Like, absolutely
Hmm.
slam dunk home run.
Yeah, because Wolf of Friendship and Dragon of Courage, like the best cards in there are the SR rookies that Bandai is mean about and only gives you 2, so you have to buy 2 of it to get a full playset.
Yeah.
And then it's the Tamers.
Yeah, and the
Like those are
Wolf
the
of
only cards that are playable.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Wolf of Friendship and Dragon of Courage also just don't give you any extra goodies. At least, like with these, because they give you the training cards, that at least is some extra value, making you want repeated purchases, just so you could have a
Hmm.
full playset. Because I know I'm going to be buying 2 of each, which means I'm going to get an extra full playset of all of the training cards. And I think that's good. Like, that's good
Hmm.
marketing. So, but yeah, as far as other things, unfortunately, as cool as Heavy Metal Dramon is, I don't think he's good.
I think you needing to hellbent yourself like is really hard in this card game where you're kind of like incidentally replacing cards in your hand.
Yeah. I think maybe Lilithmon X could do something for, like, to actually form a true Lilithmon deck. Like, I think that's the
Yeah,
piece that
the
the
pieces are
deck was
there.
kind of missing. Because essentially, you're just trying to use what? You're using the Anubis package with the EX6 Lilithmon stuff with, like, Scapegoat and whatnot. And then you just top it off with
Yeah.
Lilith, Anubis, and Lilith X.
Yeah, you get a couple new pieces from this set too, right? Because you get another
Yeah, you
two
get the soup.
Skymon
Yeah, yeah.
and a couple other things
Black
that
Auto.
aren't bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is not the set that gave us Lady Debbie X, right? Or is this also the set that does it? Oh, it does have
No,
it.
it.
So yeah, you
Yeah,
get that.
it has Lady Devi X.
Yeah, so you get that, and that's pretty good. So it makes that a pretty decent blocker. The blocker retail token that you get.
Yeah, and then the inheritable for deleting the opponent's Digimon's pretty good too, because that's
Hmm.
literally what Lilithmon's about.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely something there. Like I think the biggest problem though is that like the Lilithmons, because of waifu tax, like the EX6 ones already kind of cost a lot. So like for an unproven like deck, like it hasn't seen any results in JP. That like if you like Lilithmon, if she's your favorite Demon Lord and you're happy that she has a real deck, because she's also less hampered by like the fact that like everybody else in EX6 got like the family effect and everything, so like they're all set up to be that one archetype, whereas she's set up to be able to split into her normal deck.
Yeah, and I think that's because they had an inkling that like it was probably in like some notes somewhere that hey, we want to make Lilithmon X, so they made Lilithmon a little bit differently compared to the other demon lords as a result. Even though like yes, there is that block separation, there's still probably plenty of notes and like card ideas just floating around that they're just assigning to random places. Because like honestly, based on like all my studying on Digimon set design, it's very random and very sporadic at times. There is a method to the madness, but usually they design cards in like clumps and then they'll just randomly assign sets to them. So even though this set is depowered, it's still kind of trying to chase a little bit off of the backbone of what was in Block 3 just because they knew they wanted Lilith Ace. They knew what they that she was going to be doing and they had to play along with it.
Yeah, and like Barbara is also different than like everybody else in the family, right? He doesn't have the same like effects, but it doesn't seem like he's getting his X and like a real deck. Like, and his entire game plan is a lot harder to do because again, it's kind of hard to like get people like their hands low enough in this card game.
Yeah, trust me, I tried with Ravemon. If anyone hasn't watched that deck profile, please do because it is a very weird deck and sometimes it can work and sometimes more specifically against certain matchups, it just really does not work. And I think Barbermon is honestly just a worse version of that because at least like with Bravemon, he's just discard a card. Barbermon's like, oh, I need them to be in specific thresholds. So like players can just dodge his thresholds just by being at specific card counts, which they can
Yeah,
try
like
to do.
so all of the new Devimon stuff is also kind of trying to do like hand trash stuff, but they're at like funny ranges where like there is a spot where your opponent's hand can be where you just don't get any effect. Like, oh, they had one card too many, and so now I absolutely get nothing. Like, I don't get they have to trash one, and I don't get their hand was low, so I got to like delete something or do some other effect.
Yeah, I think it's just like a complete and utter failure in design, and I think they knew because like, it's intentional because discard always sucks in no matter what way you spin it because spoiler, players want to play with their cards. That's why people hate mill strategies, and that's why a lot of games go to self mill rather than mill the opponent. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the same kind of thing is with discard. Like, yeah, I want my own card to be put there by my own effect because that's how I'm using it. I don't want you to put it in there for me because that's denying me my right to use my card.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just yeah, it's just a failure in design because it's just a play pattern people so a very small subsect of people actually do enjoy. I'm not going to say players are out there that just nobody likes it. Somebody does, which is why they do it. But they just have to make it bad so that way everyone else can enjoy it.
Yeah, so honestly, I think that Barbermon would get an X antibody just because he got printed weird and they like gave him enough like random desperate pieces because he can steal pilfer Devimon support as well as like he got his own actual support line. But I don't think that we're gonna get him anytime soon unless he like magically makes his way into like BT20 or something. Like because EX8 we already have an idea for what's in it that's gonna be taking up like the majority of purple, being Nightmare Soldiers. So
Yeah.
I don't think that they'll have any room to like put a random like extra line and X antibody for him.
Yeah. No, I
And
definitely
purple
see
seems pretty
that.
filled.
And
So like his only hope is BT20.
as far as we know, yeah. And then the only other thing we really didn't touch on was we slightly touched on Three Musketeers with the rebooted deck, but that deck has not had that great of success. I don't think it will, but I think like the idea of it isn't bad. It seems like they're just trying to have alternative uses in terms of like what they're able to do with their card designs because we
Mm-hmm.
kind of see like a little bit of the Three Musketeers stuff kind of leak over into like the design of the what's it? The chess cards, right?
The device cards are different. So like
Yeah.
they sit there as like pseudo delay cards. Whereas these all work like antibodies, so they go into the Digimon,
Yeah.
which I do like. I do like the design space of options that like become extra sources in my Digimon. I think it's fun.
Yeah, plugins were kind of playing with that, and this kind I think plugins was what I was referring to because
Okay.
chess cards are supposed to be like better plugins, it seems like. And then this is kind of like that middle ground where it's just like these are also supposed to kind of be just better in archetype plugins.
Yeah. I think the big thing though for like Justimon is the fact that I think right now until we get confirmation otherwise, like with better translation, right now he can destroy opponents' delay options to get his effects off, which is pretty cool.
I mean, if that's the saving grace for the card, Justimon needs that bone. Just because they are trying to reboot. Like it seems like right now they're trying to reboot a lot of decks that just either didn't work or are just too functionally old, and they don't feel like
I
supporting it.
Yeah, like that's the problem is that like I think you could have done something with his old arm strategy. Like I think that he had enough pieces. It was just his low end that like really just needed to be upgraded. Like he needed a better tamer and just better like low end pieces, and they were starting to like move in that direction, and it seemed decent. Like with the Cyberdra Ace, seemed good enough.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I do think like overall, EX7 is like it's not a bad product. Obviously, for where the meta is, it might look bad from the onset, but like I always like the idea of EX sets being lower power, having better points to have people enter the game because literally if you're just a new player and you just want to get into the game, EX7 is a fantastic set to do that with because you have a couple of almost pre-built decks that you could build towards with enough product, which is always kind of cool. Because most Digimon sets don't do that. You have a starter deck that also this set supports, so that way you could just get the starter
hmm
deck, get the set, and you're good with something. So like I think
yeah,
that there's a lot of good going on with the overall design. It's just where the meta is just completely overshadowing it.
Hmm. I think though for new players, the most fun deck that you'll probably enjoy, and that's pretty easy to build out of the box, is Dragon Links. I think Dragon Links is honestly like gonna be like a locals like hero kind of deck. Like the fact that your megas float into each other, pretty sick.
Yeah,
Like it
how
just
much
means
is
that like
Hina?
they're pretty good. I think that the base Hinas aren't very much. I think it's just her AA
Oh yeah,
like
it's
went
she's
up
19
afterwards.
cents. Yeah, she's 19
Yeah,
cents.
exactly.
And if that's the only other card you need to invest, that's such a small investment.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I think you would need to pick up like one of the rookies just to like round yourself out, but that's up to you. Like to be honest, the old rookies aren't super great from EX3, so like you could probably just replace it with like a red or black like Floodgate rookie and be just as happy, if not more. But
Yeah.
I think Dragon Links will probably be like pretty fun, and there'll be like people like enjoying it. I do think that like those new guys are pretty cool. Like the fact that they have one attackings is pretty good. I do feel though that like I wish that I like that you get there when digivolving always. You don't even need to have a Hina to do it. But I do kind of lament because the old ones had like much stronger versions of those effects. So like old Metallic Dramon being like, oh, your opponent can't digivolve on unsuspended bodies, I think it is, like at all. Whereas this new one says that they can't go from four and lowers up.
Yeah, it's just trying to lock out a little bit differently.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I think there is just a lot of good going on in the set as a whole, especially if you are a newer player. Like usually these are the times that as a new player you want to enter into the game because this is just going to be the easiest point of access for you. Is when Bandai lets you be able to A, have a starter deck, B, upgrade said starter deck that's not incredibly stupid outside of the promos, and C, be able to have a set to just invest into and have a deck, even though most of the decks are going to be self contained outside of a couple of small ones. That's perfectly fine because as a player, especially a more casual player, that generally is all you like care about and need is like I get the question, I see the question nonstop. What do I need? And it's just like, well, you just need to get more of this set. Just finish off the cards in the evolutionary lines, and you're good to go.
Hmm.
And then I think this set has 12 SRs still, right? I could be wrong.
Yes, 12 SRs. We're
Yeah,
supposed to be going back down soon.
I mean, for Japan, they're going back down after this set, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, because they go back down after this set, that means that because of our combined sets, we still have to deal with garbage SR pull rates for
Hmm.
uh, at least two more sets until Unification and EX7. So
Yeah.
that sucks for us, but at least once Unification happens, I'm praying that the game is going to be in a way better state. I'm not saying the game is like bad right now. The game's doing just fine as a game. The meta is something to be determined because honestly, like we kind of been saying, meta impacts this set will barely make any waves. So it'll just be interesting to see how people are going to be implementing the few useful cards to enhance where the meta is currently going. Um,
Hmm.
and then come unification, I definitely think that going back down to the normal SR pull rates, hopefully we get more starter decks. By the time unification happens, we should be getting another starter deck because they seem to like to release starter decks 2 to 3 times a year, which I don't think is enough, but that's just me.
Hmm. My hope is we get a black starter product, and I would want either a red or I would say I'd be fine with blue, but I don't know. I think right now my big thing is that like I'm not sure what I'd want them do a starter product on anyways, right? Like, if anything, I'm like at the point where I'm like, oh, just stop doing starter products and just do advanced decks, like, because at least you feel like you can put cool cards in those.
Honestly, like in my perspective, if they were going to do starter products, it is just going to be the smarter thing to just do Liberator stuff. Like, just make more Liberator starter decks. So give each character a Liberator starter deck. And I think like that would be a really cool direction, but that would require them to make more than their normal amount of starter decks that they do for Digimon, because for whatever reason, we only get 2 starter decks when we get a wave of starter decks outside of advanced
I think
decks.
I think if they just focused on like the main characters, like the ones that they revealed when they were like showing us like all of the colored characters, like the characters for each like color, as opposed to like, so technically we have like secondary colored characters, right? So like we know Owen Dreadnought, right, is supposed to be our red Liberator protagonist, right?
Yeah.
So he's supposed to be situated like in that color and like solely that color, whereas like then we have like the secondaries. So like Winnar, right, is green, but Shoto's green and Shoto's mono green, whereas Winnar is green black. We have the like mono black character. I forget his name right now, but he plays like Galactimon,
Yeah.
and I think that that could be a pretty cool starter product. Like just more random support for that, I think it'd be fine.
I mean,
Because that's a
hell,
character
give
that's
us
hard to like.
yeah, even just
Yeah.
give us reprints. Like if they are going to continue using the old Galactimon stuff, give us reprints of Galactimon. Like
Hmm.
I think that would be a very good way to have the ability to give us reprints. Is just
Hmm.
giving us the reprints. It's like, "Oh yeah, you want to buy the Galactimon, buy into Galactimon? Here's the starter deck." And
Hmm.
then buy some of the cards from the set and then you're good to go. Like why not Bandai? Just why not?
I also feel like the fact that Violet plays like 3 decks, like probably means that she's a character that needs like more product for her.
Right. So like and I think that's why I want like a Liberator starter deck or like just a Liberator starter pack or whatever.
Hmm.
Or even just like a battle box, however you want to label it or name it, like or a premium deck or whatever if they want to call it that too. Like it's not rocket science, just being able to set up products to give us more ways to have access at the game. I'm not saying the game is inaccessible. I'm just saying lower that barrier as much as possible, and ideally you'll get more returns on the investment, especially if you make the products A good for both returning and new players, and
Hmm.
B just good product design in general. I think like starter decks designs have came a long way from what they used to be. Granted, they kind of had to be, but like still, I think like even
Oh,
just the basic starter decks are like what we got for these two are leaps and bounds better than literally almost everything we've gotten before.
hmm.
So it's just up to Bandai to actually decide how they want to progress. I'm
I
not
forgot
Bandai.
a card we should mention. Otamamon, the
Otama.
Nature Spirit
Oh, the
card
another
rookie.
floodgate. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a blue Psychmon Floodgate, so that's good. That's good to have in the
Yeah,
card game. So
for
if you open those, keep those.
yeah, for the color that already has a lot of floodgates, like blue and red have some of the most like blue, red and black have like the most floodgates. Purple has the most relevant floodgates.
yeah.
Yeah, purple has some of the most relevant floodgates and yellows and green are kind of lacking in the floodgate department. They have some. Don't get me wrong. They
Well,
just
no, blue has all of the relevant ones because they have can't
yeah.
reduce play cost, they can't reduce evo cost, and memory blocking.
Yeah, all they need is the cute mon
Can't
or
play
the
by effect.
yeah, cute and
Yeah.
pillow. They're missing cute and pillow, but like those are more niche as is.
Hmm.
Like the those colors run them because they don't have anything else.
Yeah.
So
Well, the can't play by effects are pretty good. Like as the card games kind of evolved where like we went from like you build your one stack and you like have high enough stats that you can just like punch into security and hopefully not get outed by an option in security that your opponent has to play an option to delete you so that you just could rebuild. Like to now like guys be spawning tons of guys. So
Right. I'm just saying who else in Liberator.
Liberator characters.
Yeah, the Liberator characters. Who has their tamers? This search engine's being weird, so whatever. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Zenith, that's it. That's the Galactic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, not to backtrack, like Zenith could be Resident Black, Violet could be Resident Purple.
I think the issue is though that she plays multiple decks, and we're told that one of her decks isn't all purple. So
yeah,
I guess technically because Yuki exists, she's supposed to be your like mono purple, but all of her cards like got red coloring for the mons. So
yeah,
unsure.
Then you got Owen for Resident Red, who he's gonna get a whole new Digimon, like a brand new Digimon.
Yeah, Elizamon.
Oh, is that its name?
Yeah, they revealed its name not too long ago.
Okay.
Elizamon.
Yeah. Then we got Winter as Resident Green. You could have what's her face? Be Blue. The administrator chick. I'm blanking.
Yeah, we're getting her. Yao Quinlan. She's getting a tamer in the upcoming BT set, which gives you more like water support. She actually has pretty cool cards. Her little partner Digimon is the like one with the like pink coral shell like on its head, and then it evolves into Shellmon, which I think is fun. So I've always been interested in like that line because Shellmon's like a classic guy. He's there from the episode there. Yeah, it's there from the episode where Greymon shows up. So pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of good that Liberators is trying to set up. It's just a shame that Liberators is basically doing what Survive should have done. Like, they should have made a Survive set more than just the Survive promos. And Survive honestly could have been something way bigger than the mediocre result that they had it be. And this is where like Pokemon kind of succeeds where Digimon fails, because Pokemon's like the master of multimedia crossovers, where it's just like the video games coincide with the anime, which coincides with the card game, and they all release on a very tight schedule. And Digimon is just sitting here being all over the place. And it seems like Liberators is their attempt to actually try to have more of a united front. Ghost games kind of seem that way, but they were kind of just all over the place. It's just like, oh right, we need to add Ghost game cards in. Here's some Gamamon stuff. We'll just throw this in like 4 or 5 different sets. And then they need to be better at like planning ahead in terms of uniting their different multimedia like attempts.
I mean, the one thing that I do really like about Liberators is like one of the things that the anime did, which like is cool in an anime sense, but like I don't know, like does force things to be slow. Is that like in the anime it takes like an arc to get like each new like Evo, right?
Yeah.
Like in the first 13 episodes, we all get champion level Digimon. Cool. In the next like little bit, we all get our ultimate level Digimon, and then 2 people get megas, and that was it for that first Digimon anime, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like because Liberators is based on the card game, it was impossible for them to hold back like showing us Zephagamon in the comic and stuff like that. So I do kind of appreciate that it forces them to like design full lines and give us full lines like right away.
Yeah, and then the obvious story beats and elements are going to be coming out as the card game is like, getting new sets. And I think like that's the big like W in terms of multimedia crossovers that like Digimon kind of needed to do from the beginning, because like imagine how much more successful Ghost games would have been if they decided to go like the Pokemon route with it, and then think about how much more successful Survive could have been. A, if they included promos inside of Survive, and B, if they actually marketed Survive through the card game, that could have made more people be interested in both products, to be honest. Like, as a Digimon card fan, it gave them excitement for another Digimon game, and then as a Digimon game fan, it gives them a reason to look at the card game.
Hmm. I think they just need to do better right now with integrating things that aren't just the anime. Like, so them like being in it to win it with Liberators, I think is a good sign, and hopefully we start to go back and see more stuff. Like the fact that Cross Hearts, the good old failed anime, is getting another set, but it's based on the manga. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think because we're almost done with anime material, they are going to be, because right now we're on like wave 2 or wave 3 of retreads, which is basically
Hmm.
like they broke down each of the appearances based on a particular portion of the anime. So they're already almost done with the movies. They have done at least 2/3 of almost every single season, except for Cross Wars. They did the entire season, which is why their retread is manga based. And maybe
Hmm.
now we're going to like get into more manga territory, because it would be cool to get like a whole V Tamer deck as just an example. Um,
Hmm.
and that's where Diaboromon X Antibody comes from, and another version of Agudamon possibly. So like there's a lot that they can still do just from like opening up and expanding a little bit. And this isn't even touching on the card games. Or not card games, the actual video games, or even just like, as we saw, retreads of old card games cards that are also
Hmm.
movie references too. So like they do a fantastic job at all of the references and lore stuff. Like they know their stuff, and I can tell that they care very deeply about the Digimon IP when they're implementing this type of stuff. It's just there's still so much untapped potential that it's actually still kind of crazy how much room we have. And you look at like One Piece, and they already blasted through everything at least once. And it's just like now they have to do retreads forever, and then maybe a couple of video games because they don't have any other where like any other place to go. And it's not like there's that many One Piece games that aren't just retelling the story. So yeah, One Piece is going to be running real dry on content. Dragon Ball has like a butt ton of fan made content that they keep doing because they have to make a video game every single year, and they do tend to do new content with it. Uh,
Right.
and then Dragon Ball's also getting a new anime, so like they at least have more room to work with for literally being a smaller series than One Piece, and it's just it's so funny, like seeing how Bandai goes about set design, card design, trying to fit in lore to each of the card games. I think for Dragon Ball they literally gave up because that's like impossible, and One Piece kind of seems like they gave up too. But it's nice
Yeah,
to
they just
see.
went about it so weirdly.
Yeah, but at least it's nice to see like out of all of Bandai's card games, it feels like Digimon has the most love put into it, even though we don't feel the most loved.
Hmm.
So I know we kind of got off topic, but I think this was like still just very fun and interesting, all stemming from like literally what EX7 is bringing us.
Hmm.
So I think this is a good place to call it. Do you have any other final thoughts, Headless?
No, but I'm always looking forward to new cards, even if they don't get to do anything. Still nice to have them.
Yeah, I mean, they do a pretty good job at trying to appease as many people as possible. Because, like you said, you get your Hexablaumon, and then I get my Saber Leomon Ace. So, like, there's still stuff for us to look forward to. New cards is new cards. It's always fun to see what kind of experimentation that we could do to make them successful, or just, have fun with them. So, uh, feel free, chat or any listeners, to tell me your thoughts on what you think about EX7 down in the comments below. And at this point, I want to thank everyone for listening all the way to the end. It really does mean the world to us that you actually care about our thoughts and opinions, especially in this long form type of content. So if you enjoyed this episode and like to help support the podcast, please, like I already said before at the beginning, do all the social media doobly-doos and make sure to also share it with others on social media so that way we can try to get this to spread a little bit and expand the audience. And thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time.